Food and nutrition security, promote food systems that are sustainable and contribute to the improvement of health, development policies to encourage sustainable production of food supplies directed to both producers and consumers. With that, we come up with a concept on environmentally friendly farming. Eliminate poverty and empower women farmers, smallholder farmers, young farmers, and also indigenous group of people. Ensure their access to land, water, and seed, as well as their full involvement in public decision-making regarding food production and food nutrition security. Sustainable energy for all, we take concrete steps to end fossil fuel subsidies, increase proportion of alternative energy use to 25% aggregate energy consumption by 2021, and reducing energy use for GDP by 25% in 2030 compared with 2005. Sustainable cities and innovation, we promote the use of waste and renewable energy source in urban environments, plan for advanced sustainability and quality of life in the cities, develop a network for knowledge sharing and innovation, and the government also channel resources to develop people-centered, sustainable cities with time and measurable goals in such a way that empowers local communities and promote equality and accountability. The issue should be merged in the policy in all line ministries. This is very important. If each ministries conduct their own policies, there will be no integration and we cannot count on sustainable development. Second question is SD will be primary concern of environmental policymakers. I'd like to merge with the third question. What are the prospects of strengthening linkages between different policies areas? Still, there are constraints and challenges to effective coordination and cooperation of the implication of Rio Plus 20 outcome. The first one is still low level of awareness on sustainable development. There is observed to be low awareness and weak appreciation for SD, especially recognition of the importance of environmental dimension among government officials and workers outside of the environment and the planning ministries. Lack of crowd by environment ministries tend to have limited authority and capability to influence overall development planning and implementation. Environmental considerations tend to be subordinated to the economic and social dimension in development initiative of the governments. Weak coordination within the governments, there tends to be lack of effective teamwork across relevant ministries and agencies to achieve a more holistic and integrative approach to sustainable development, and this stems from lack of communication and information sharing, which hampers into interagency coordination and cooperation. Diverse legislative framework, while all ministries have legislative framework, supporting SD in place of at least in some form or the other, its extent and scope are diverse. This therefore poses the challenge of effectiveness of the legislative framework, coupled with the problems arising due to the weak capacity of implementing this legislation. Weak civil society involvement, the level of development and engagement of the civil society community varies widely within the country. There remains wide scope for increasing the widening meaningful participation by independent non-government organizations in development process from planning to implementation. And of course, private sector participation. There is a similar variation of the level of development organization and participation of the private business sector in development process in the country. And rapid economic lead to greater openness on the part of government to provide mechanism for stronger private sector participation. And the last one is passive role of scientific community. As mentioned earlier, the scientific and research community needs to play a more active role in developing an integrated scientific perspective and consensus to support decision-making. And with that, I will say that implementing a Rio Plus 20 initiative to achieve the desired outcome is a key challenge of our country. Thank you very much for your kindness.
Thank you, Motip, for sharing your initiatives in Thailand and also the implication to further development in other countries for national sustainable development strategy. Now, let me invite the next speaker, Dr. Mark Elder. He is the program director of this project in the IJS. Mark, you have the floor.
Yeah, thank you very much, Takimoto-san. The previous speakers have spoken mostly about the national level, so I would like to talk more about the regional level. And first, I have to confess that although my title says Strengthening Regional Sustainable Development Governance, probably I'm more going to talk about strengthening the environmental pillar. First of all, the question is, why we need to strengthen regional governance, and I think we all agree that the global reform is too slow on one hand, and then also on the other hand, we can see that Thailand and Korea, those kind of countries are making some progress and efforts, but other developing countries need additional assistance. And regional institutions can play a role in implementing Rio Plus 20. So what is needed to be done? I think probably the most important thing is probably capacity building and also information sharing, and these can also contribute to monitoring and implementation. But more in the long term, I think more regional cooperation can help strengthen the scientific basis of decision making. And one point that hasn't really been talked about much in context of Rio Plus 20, but is especially important for this region, is that economic integration and trade liberalization is still progressing, and this I think is going to have important implications for sustainable development and environment. Next, I'd like to look at the current situation of regional governance. Again, especially maybe more focusing on the environmental aspect. But sometimes it's said that East Asia is not so institutionalized. But if you look, there are a lot of them, and a lot of different kinds of them as well. So not only the UN agencies and programs that we've talked about a lot, and also development banks, but we also have some sub-regional institutions and environment ministers' meetings and multilateral environmental agreements, a lot of bilateral cooperation, intercity networks, partnerships, and many NGOs are active. So there's actually a lot going on, although it's mostly kind of voluntary, and it's not, of course, rising to the level of like the EU. So where could we act to improve regional governance? I think there are a number of areas. There's a significant amount of kind of overlap and fragmentation among mechanisms. And despite all the mechanisms that we have, there's still some gaps that are not well addressed. And therefore, there's a need for better coordination among the mechanisms. And also, I think there's a wide recognition of the importance of capacity building, but actually, what is actually delivered in terms of capacity building, is not nearly enough. And then especially, I think for the science policy interface, a lot more could be done at the regional level. Funding is a particularly serious problem. A lot of these institutions are mechanisms are very much underfunded, and therefore the conclusion is that the effectiveness is rather mixed. So I think they're clearly helping, and we're better off with them than without them. But certainly more is needed to be done.